My friends, we are here. We are here to celebrate the divine spirit of love with our bodies and with our souls, with our hearts and with our minds, with songs and with words. We are here today to give because of everything that has been given to us. We are here to give because of the abundance that we have received. We're here to share freely with one another and to receive freely because we were created to depend on one another and love one another fully and to be loved fully. We are here to celebrate everything that might otherwise be defined as differences that might divide us, differences of our age or of our body or of our opinion, of our culture, of our ability, of our religious convictions, and of our spiritual intentions. We are here to put things into perspective, to celebrate everything that truly matters, and to laugh about each and every one of those things that we take far too seriously. We are here to cry about everything that truly touches our heart. We are here to free our minds. We are here to grow our souls, and we are here to change our worlds. We are here, and good morning. I'm the Reverend Christopher Rowe. I have the pleasure of serving as the acting senior minister here in this Cathedral of Love and Temple of Peace. I use he, him pronouns, and on behalf of everyone who calls this their spiritual home, welcome to Fountain Street Church. No matter who you are, no matter where you are or where you live, whether it's right up the street on Fountain Street or across the country, no matter who you love or who you are loved by, no matter what you believe in or what you don't believe in at all, whether this is your very first time here at Fountain Street Church or you are a Fountain Street Church lifer, each of you and all of us have a place in this community where love, justice, equity, and inclusion are the shared work of our liberating faith. So on behalf of everyone who calls us their home, please let me welcome you this morning. This morning, we welcome our very own Marty Arnold to our virtual pulpit as we go into week 5. Can you believe it? Week 5 of the 2021 Summer Speaker Series. I'm eager to hear Marty's message to us this morning. Thank you so much, Marty, for your gifts and words and perspectives to us today. Additionally, we welcome our very own Phil Pletcher to the piano this morning as he draws us deeper into worship with his gifts of music. And we welcome Sam Arnold to our worship this morning as he brings his own gifts of music to this service. Sam is the son of Marty and Paul Arnold, and he's a graduate of our very own character school here at Fountain Street Church. So thank you, Marty and Phil and Sam, for your part in making this morning's worship service meaningful and inspiring. My friends, this is Fountain Street Church. I again am the Reverend Christopher Rowe, and I am so glad that you have chosen to worship with us this morning. Welcome.
In the beginning, and for 100 million years after, Earth had just one large ocean and one island called Pangaea. Animal life first stirred in the ocean and crawled or washed ashore, where fins and tentacles became legs, scales became fur, gills became lungs. Pangaea teemed with life that would be at once familiar and strange to our eyes. Giant dragonflies hovered over tiny animals with all the charm of naked mole rats. Pangaea teemed with life. Back then, Earth was young and restless. It belched and pitched and tossed Pangaea until it split. The pieces slid over the Earth's crust. 2 went toward the poles. Others straddled the equator. Some went west and some went east. Each carried a portion of Pangaea flora and fauna. In their new location, some plants died out, but many adapted and flourished. A plant withered in Australia but grew lush in North America, while an animal that died in Asia evolved into something unique in Africa. Eventually, each new continent found a delicate balance, with just enough plants to feed the insects and the animals, and just enough small animals to keep the bigger ones fed. And God looked over these 7 Edens and said, "It is good."
Today I wrote a song in the rain and made a plan not to complain. Tomorrow I may snake the drain, but today I sat and watched the rain. The sun is taking a holiday too. The gray skies don't make me feel blue. The aquifer is taking a big drink. The earth, she's just too drunk to think. Now it's really coming down, water falling on my sound. Soak the verse if it's too long, rain down, rain upon my song. Today I wrote a song in the rain. I saw on the news they were all going insane. But a song about that won't be one of mine. But I'll write others before I die. Now it's really coming down, water falling on my sound. Soak the verse if it's too long, rain down, rain upon my song. Now it's really coming down, water falling on my sound. Soak the verse if it's too long, rain down, rain upon my song.
The reading this morning is the creation story of my religion, a religion with not just one Eden, but 7. Although I say it's my religion, it might be yours too, or become yours after today. I hope so. For today, I'm here to profess my belief in religious naturalism. This belief system started with the Greek Stoics, as well as many ancient cultures, including Native Americans. For me, the strong emotions I associate with religion, like awe and reverence, come from nature and influence the way I see the world. You might think that this is a harmless, tree-hugging kind of faith, but I warn you that I belong to the radical, evangelical wing of religious naturalism. I'm going to try my best to bring you around to my way of thinking. So if over the next few minutes the Spirit moves you, feel free to jump up and shout, "I believe." It feels perfectly normal to me to be a religious naturalist and a 40-year member of this church. David Rankin, who preached from this pulpit for 16 years, taught, "Religion is the expression of a single human spirit's relationship to the world. Its search for meaning and the joy of discovery." Immersing myself in plant communities in my garden is my daily religious practice. When I say immersed, I mean that literally. The other day I stepped in muck and lost my shoe. My fingernails are a disgrace from May until October, and my arms are often covered with scratches. Tending to my woodland, my experimental oak savanna, and native flower beds energizes me so thoroughly that it's only at the end of the day that I realize how exhausted I am. I am moved by crystal clear skies and the smell of coming rain after a drought. The song of the wood thrush, a chipping pair of of cardinals or the rustle of leaves overhead is my favorite soundtrack. Nature grows my soul. Today, I invite you to consider the myriad species of the earth, most especially plants. First, because plants are surprisingly complex and endlessly fascinating. Second, because we humans seem hell-bent to destroy them. And finally, I'm going to tell you what you can do starting today to help put things right. My story of Pangea reveals a great truth, capital G, capital T, that is both incredibly complicated and utterly simple. The evidence of this truth is all around us, but can be as invisible to us as the ocean is to the fish who swim there. The great truth of religious naturalism is that every species on Earth is interdependent and lives by the rules of their natural community. Our homes, schools, parks, and workplaces all sit within one of these plant communities. In Michigan, there are 80 distinct ones. Some have strange names like interdunal wetlands, oak barrens, emergent marshes, or even volcanic cliffs. Right now, I'm standing at the edge of an ancient oak hickory forest that once covered much of Grand Rapids and 20% of the Lower Peninsula. We know this because between 1816 and 1855, government surveyors mapped the entire surface of Michigan on foot and on horseback. They noted soil types and what trees grew in each square mile. The maps were initially used to boost land sales in Michigan, which had a reputation for being an interminable swamp. But today, these maps allow you to find what was growing in your neighborhood 200 years ago. We also know about this because of a woman named Emma Cole, who spent the latter half of the 19th century cataloging the plants she found in and around Grand Rapids when she was a teacher at Grand Rapids Central High School. By mapping and cataloging ecosystems, we are able to understand how organisms live and how they interact, governed by strict sets of checks and balances. Here's some examples. The white turtlehead is a wetland wildflower that locks its nectar inside tightly closed petals. Only the long-tongued bumblebee is strong enough to pry the petals open and reach the sweet nectar inside. But turtleheads will never take over a wetland because nature also sends the caterpillar of the Baltimore checkerspot butterfly to dine on its leaves. Our native lupin depends on 4 kinds of native bees and 1 kind of fly for its pollination needs, while 8 species of caterpillar keep the lupin from overtaking its habitat. Plants and birds have partnerships too. Our native red columbine and the ruby-throated hummingbird rendezvous every spring, while the dusky-winged butterfly caterpillar nibbles columbines all summer. The sheer number of ecosystem connections is mind-boggling, and each took millions to develop. In a healthy ecosystem, every organism has its helpers to help it reproduce and hunters to keep it in check. We often have thought of nature as a cruel and wanton place where the struggle for survival means winners and losers, predator and prey. But there's plenty of evidence that nature can be cooperative and kind. For example, plants have some pretty admirable parenting skills. If a mother plant dropped all of her seeds on the ground below, she would create a crowded mass of seedlings fighting for survival. So plants have devised clever strategies to scatter their seed, to get the kids out of the house. Maple trees produce tiny helicopters that get tossed upward in the wind. Cottonwoods release their seeds on soft pillows of fluff. The seeds of the wild jewelweed, which is a cousin of the impatient, are held so tightly inside bud cases that when they are brushed by a passing animal, they literally explode, scattering the seeds for several feet. The Velcro seeds of the avens are happy to hitch a ride home on your pant leg and socks. The little bloodroot flower and the ant have struck a sweet deal regarding seed distribution. Each bloodroot seed comes with a tasty and nutritious attachment that is irresistible to ants. Workers drag the seed great distances into their underground nurseries. When the larvae have eaten the treat, the workers drag the seed again into it, but this time into an underground garbage heap, which just happens to be the perfect planting depth for a new bloodroot plant. My father gave me about 10 bloodroot plants about 20 years ago. Today I have thousands, thanks to ants. These familiar insects, in fact, disperse the seeds of 10,000 plants worldwide. Remember this the next time you're tempted to put out ant poison. And members of ecosystems have lots of ways to communicate. In a wildflower meadow, color, size, and shape of flower is like a billboard directing pollinator traffic to flowers designed just for them. Bumblebees can open tightly closed flowers, while smaller bees can crawl into nodding flower heads. Hummingbirds and butterflies with long tongues can reach inside tubular blossoms, and hummingbirds are always drawn to red flowers. When everybody stays in their own lane, there's enough to go around. In 1980, a Canadian forester named Suzanne Simard noticed that young trees replanted in clear cuts were stunted and unhealthy. She suspected it might be because they were isolated from larger trees. Now, she knew that trees take in carbon dioxide and give off oxygen. So she experimented by giving a mature birch tree carbon dioxide marked with radioactive isotopes. Then she waited to see where this isotope would end up. To her surprise, she found it in the needles of a nearby Douglas fir. It was a small fir, and firs need sunlight to grow. So you'd think a 5-foot fir in the shade of a 20-foot birch would be in some serious trouble. But the experiment revealed that birch was sharing its nourishing carbon with the fir. That is, birch was feeding fir. More research has turned up stunning evidence that trees talk to each other all the time. And more surprising, they do it with the help of the roots of mushroom plants, which are called mycelium. Using this vast network, a sick tree can send an SOS that it's under attack by insects or disease, allowing its healthy neighbors to send it nutrition and also allowing healthy trees to raise their defenses. This system has been dubbed the Wood Wide Web. Back in Canada, Suzanne Simard was still wondering why one tree would feed another, one not even of its own species. So when fir grew taller than birch, she repeated her experiment and discovered that the flow of carbon was reversed. Fir was repaying its debt. These complex interactions are a key to species survival, and it should alert us to what happens when humans interfere. The trouble begins when we start creating artificial habitats, which is what most of our gardens are. We choose plants with little understanding of how a habitat works. The yellow Coreopsis is just one example. This pretty, simple wildflower has spent millions of years perfecting its flat, open flower as a magnet for butterflies and bees. Its open petals make it a favorite, while its seed heads are favored by the American goldfinch. But in recent decades, genetically modified hybrids, or cultivars, have come on the market. These flowers have so many petals that are so tightly packed that pollinators can't reach the nectar inside. Gardeners are often fooled into buying native plants like these, but pollinators won't mistake it for the real McCoy. In a climate with distinct seasons like ours, timing is everything for birds. During the summer nesting season, birds need sweet, high carbohydrate fruit like blueberries and serviceberry. But in the fall, they need high fat fruits from the native spice bush or viburnum to survive the winter or make a long migration south. So imagine what happens when Michigan birds find the high carb fruits of the imported honeysuckle, privet, or multiflora rose. The presence of imported shrubs in American gardens may have contributed to a 30% drop in the bird population since 1970. We see a similar problem in our early spring gardens. The rusty patch bumblebee, one of many kinds of bumblebees in Michigan, emerges from hibernation hungry for nectar. She searches for flowers that she knows, like Dutchman's breeches or trout lily. She's hungry for the pollen of silver maples, willows, American plums, and serviceberry. But many gardens created purely for our human enjoyment are bare in April, which may explain why this once common bumblebee hasn't been seen in Michigan for more than 20 years. These are the parables of religious naturalism. They have taught me that the rules of the natural world deserve more respect than I have often given them. They make me pause and ask, what would fir be without birch? Hummingbird without its red flower? Bloodroot without ant? And vice versa. In the 20th century, the environmental movement focused mostly on setting aside more wilderness for wildlife. We created our national park systems and our state park systems, local nature centers, and state and national forests. We saved all this land from further development. But in the 21st year of the 21st century, our country has changed. 41% of the continental US is used for agriculture. 54% has been urbanized. Today, 95% of the continental United States has been altered for human use. One species has claimed for itself almost everything, with little thought to the 7,000 native animals and tens of thousands of species of plants and insects that have lived in our North American Eden for 240 million years. We have paved over enough land to cover the state of Pennsylvania. We've plowed up, paved over, and otherwise altered 200 million acres in this country every single year. Although saving American wilderness in the 20th century was a great idea, there's almost no wilderness left to save. As we wrestle with threats of climate change, it won't be enough to guard the remaining 5%. What we need to do instead is to rebuild the 95%. Land rehabilitation, or rewilding of North America, is our best hope. So how do we begin? The first step is to stop the spread of invasive species. When human beings transport an organism from one continent to another, it often ends badly. An example is garlic mustard. In Europe and Asia, this woodland wildflower is perfectly well behaved. In the 1860s, it showed up in Long Island. Today, it's all through my woods and probably a woods near you, and it shades out wildflowers needed by the rusty patch bumblebee and many other species. Any American caterpillar who dares nibble its leaves quickly dies. Deer, woodchucks, and rabbits won't touch it, so it spreads, and it spreads, and it spreads. Garlic mustard and several other invasives are threatening Amon Park. Its rare stands of Virginia bluebells are threatened. Without annual garlic mustard pulls, the days of bluebells are surely numbered. So why did a well-behaved European flower go rogue in America? Because it left behind 30 European insect species and several herbivores that like to eat it. We can think about an invasive species sort of like a trumpeter taking the stage with a string ensemble without rehearsal. The result is chaos. Before we blame Europeans and Asians for giving us their good-for-nothing plants, consider our lovely American rhododendron and what it's doing to the Scottish countryside. Over there, volunteers hold annual rhodie bashing parties to get rid of it. Our American lacebugs, midges, and weevils that love to chew on rhododendron leaves did not travel with the rhododendron to Scotland. That changes everything. I'm going to pause briefly because I think this talk about foreigners invading our pristine American shores sounds like chauvinism. So let me clarify. Human migration between continents is fundamentally different. Homo sapiens across every continent are one species, whether you're Nepali, Norwegian, or Nigerian. All humans are created equal, and that's not just a social ideal, it's scientific fact. Now, back to plants. Another reason invasive species are such a threat is because we continue to import and propagate and use them in our gardens, often with no idea of the damage we're doing. I'm guilty. Vinca, in my flower bed, Vinca is also called periwinkle, escaped down the hill and soon was blanketing my woods until I started to remove it. English ivy that I rooted from my wedding bouquet back in 1973 was a favorite part of my garden for years before I realized it was killing my dogwoods. Rare wild places like Amon Park is threatened by plants that escape from gardens like honeysuckle. We need to choose our plants much more carefully. Repent, the end is near. Today, our gardens need to be more than just another pretty place. With our help, gardens can become natural communities of trees, flowers, insects, birds, and other wildlife. It will be worth the effort. You've probably heard that insects fertilize 80% of our food crops. There's just no substitute for them. But remember that green plants also produce the oxygen that we breathe. You just can't exaggerate the importance of plants. And plants need healthy ecosystems to survive. This might seem like a lot of bad news, but my message this morning is one of great hope. What kind of evangelist would I be without offering redemption? So here's one more bit of data. We Americans mow enough turf lawn to cover both Missouri and Oklahoma. Let me say that again. We Americans mow enough turf grass to cover both Missouri and Oklahoma. Wait a minute, you say. How is that good news? Because in that data is the word we. 80% of the land east of Mississippi is under private ownership. 86%. This includes my yard and yours and the gardens and the businesses with vast lawns. If enough landowners returned part of their land to nature, we could increase the size of North Americans' healthy natural communities by 200 million acres. That's 10 times the area of Yellowstone Park. A solution to our existential crisis has literally been laid at our doorsteps. We have everything we need to turn the tide. What an opportunity. What great news. So how do we begin transforming our yards and gardens from deserts to oases? I'm going to suggest several ways, but you'll find all of these in much more detail on a resource page that I've posted on the church's website at fountainstreet.org/summer speakers. A great way to get inspired is to walk through the former Highlands Golf Course at West Leonard and Oakley Northwest. This 120-acre site is being restored through a partnership between Blandford and the Land Conservancy of West Michigan. Sand traps are becoming wetlands and ponds where turtles, frogs, and nesting herons just miraculously appeared. Manicured fairways are being turned into prairies full of native wildflowers. This is a valiant and hopeful partnership that has a 100-year plan, and it's leading the way in land restoration in our community. Go see it. Second, if you'd like to know more about how to rewild your yard, my best advice is to join Wild Ones. This is a nonprofit organization with 55 local chapters nationwide. The work of this organization, simply put, is to heal the earth 1 yard at a time. To heal the earth 1 yard at a time. This statement is full of poetry, empowerment, and hope. My association with this organization here in Grand Rapids and my work on its national board has fundamentally changed the way I view the world. Since 2016, I've been turning old turf grass in my yard into a woodland and 2 small prairies. This will occupy me for many happy summers to come. Another ray of hope is the new Homegrown National Park. This is a grassroots effort by property owners led by Douglas Ptolemy in the US and Canada to replant 1/2 of our lawns with native plants. The goal is 20 million acres. Over 8,000 gardens have already been registered on their website. To inspire you, I invite you to stop and see the newest flower bed near the bus stop at Fountain Street Church. It is being replanted with shade-loving native plants of West Michigan. On June 15th, it became part of the Homegrown National Park. The project team hopes that this garden will inspire you as you pass by. I'm going to leave you with several ideas for creating your own backyard Eden. First, the next time you purchase plants, make sure 2 of every 3 are native. 2, if you choose just 1 plant, let it be an oak tree. An oak tree is the supermarket of the forest, or savanna. Just this 1 tree supports 570 other species, from caterpillars to birds to mammals. It's been called a keystone species. Without the oak, our ecosystems would collapse. To make this super easy, I have left several oak seedlings under the portico at church today. They're free to loving homes. Number 3, eliminate the invasive species on your property. Just this week, I learned at a Wild Ones meeting that Japanese barberry, a difficult invasive, is the favorite haunt of the black-legged lime tick. There, now you've got more motivation. 4, pitch those pesticides. That creepy crawler chewing your sunflower might grow up to be a checker spot butterfly. The holes in your aster means that the crescent butterfly caterpillar has found its favorite food. This nibbling is proof that all is well in your ecosystem. Number 5, if you don't have outdoor space of your own, volunteer at a nature center or help with a garlic mustard pull. Or plant a flower pot. I know a Fountain Street couple who grows milkweed on their 3rd floor balcony. Number 6, a word to the overzealous. Please remember that an unmowed lawn does not a meadow make. A native garden should be a place of beauty that pleases you and the neighbors. Number 7, be kind to bees. Michigan has 450 species of native bees. Most are solitary, gentle visitors to your yard. Welcome them and teach your children not to fear them. Number 8, practice interspecies tolerance. We may own the land, but we're not the only residents. Not every critter in my yard is there to sting me, torment me, or move into my attic. So let's step aside just a little and share the land with the living things that live there and have lived there long before we arrived. We've run up a heavy debt to our land. We put our finger on the scale and took more than our share. We've opened the door to invaders. We've abused our power out of ignorance. But with new knowledge, we can begin to use that power for good. As a progressive religious community, Fountain Street's great strength is our willingness to embrace diversity and discover what connects us. The day that we welcome other species into that community is long overdue. As a religious naturalist, I'm optimistic. We can help nature restore itself because in the end, we know that the compassion we show for all species will be our own salvation. So let the rewilding begin, one flower pot, one patio, and one yard at a time. Amen and amen.
Over the last year or more, we have talked about the idea of cultivating and nurturing and nourishing an ecosystem, and that takes commitment. That takes commitment of time and energy and resources. In my own home, we have been growing a native wildflower garden that was inspired by the very one that Marty Arnold has talked about here at Fountain Street Church, and that has taken a tremendous amount of work and energy and time and patience, and of course the commitment of resources. And our church ecosystem and our broader community ecosystem are very similar. They take that same level of commitment and that same level of surrender of our resources to keep them going and keep them sustained. And so when we take this offering, that is yet another tangible way of showing our commitment to those resources. It's a way of saying that we value this cathedral of love and this temple of peace so much that we will commit just a little bit more of our financial resources to keeping this ministry going and to sharing those gifts and those commitments and resources beyond these walls to the community organizations we support. And so with that commitment in mind, the offering will now most generously and graciously be received. Thank you, all of you, for being with us this morning. Thank you again to Marty Arnold for your uplifting and charging reflection to us this morning. Thank you again to Phil Pletcher for your gifts of music, and of course to Sam Arnold for the gifts of your music among us this morning. And thank you again to Danny and Conor, who quite frankly make these summer services possible. My friends, as we depart from this sacred hour with one another and take to heart the words from Marty's message today, I invite you to open your minds to the infinite possibilities that might be ahead of you this week. I invite you to open your souls to the endless invitations for growth and flourishing that this week offers you. And I invite you to open your inner worlds to our shared outer worlds so that we all might live in a more loving, just, inclusive, and equitable island home together. So go in peace until we meet again. We love you.